Well, welcome to American Artisans. Here with Tom Rochioli, and I want to get a little insight in what's happening, what's happened, and how it all started, really.
Well, it all started when my grandfather came here in 1938 to work this land, and the American dream. He farmed it. We had hops, we had beans, but he eventually was able to buy it. In comes my father. The wine thing wasn't really happening. We always had wine grapes in the hills. My father was getting wise about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, cool climate varieties, so he started planting. He's one of the first guys out here that actually dove in with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Pinot Noir,
yeah.
What was it you think that made Joe realize that going from, I think, production of grapes or to something more specific like Pinot, like you're saying?
Right.
What was the moment that made him decide that?
I think, grapes were inexpensive, and nobody wanted to pay for them, so you always wanted huge crops.
You sold it by the ton, right?
Sold it by the ton, and there was always fighting for price per ton, and he also was interested in quality, and I think he had a little knack for fine wine, and Pinot Noir interested him, and he wanted to do quality, and he'll tell you, I mean, they didn't want to pay for these high-end grapes, but he stuck with it. And eventually he started selling these grapes to wineries that used the name, and it was recognized as really a good vineyard. The right place at the right time, the right variety, the right place. It worked well for us, and you got to give him all the credit for taking the chance. Now, there's a lot of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay out here. It's just, that's the way it is, and I have to give my father credit for actually starting that.
How hard was it to convince your dad that you should be making wine as opposed to growing these great grapes and selling them to winemakers, that now you got a reputation?
Well, it kind of came a roundabout way. The quality was known even when I was a young guy, and I left, went to school. I really didn't
Weren't you going to be a banker?
I was. Yeah. I actually got recruited by Bank of America right out of college. But I didn't really want to work here. Father-son thing was a little tough. But I worked for Bank of America for a year, and I was able to work with wineries. And I don't know, it just started to make sense. And I came back. I really hated banking. Okay,
banking wasn't your deal.
Tie doesn't work with me. But I ended up coming back, and I had an idea. This property was called Fenton Acres, and my dad had some wines made. They were peddling them. They were decent wines, but no marketing, and I came back and said, I think we could do this using Rocchioli. So the convincing part was to start a winery and be a partner, and the second part was changing the name from Fenton Acres to Rocchioli. I wouldn't say he was terrible about it, but he was a little resistant. But
took a little pushing.
Well,
coaxing.
I think it made sense to him. It took him time. And the Rocchioli part said, hey, that's who we are. Our first labeled wine with Rocchioli was an 82 Pinot that we were having made at a neighboring winery. And we built this building here in 1985, and I started making the wine.
82 was the first vintage.
It said J. Rocchioli.
J. Rocchioli on the label. Well, I remember when I opened Oriole in New York, which was 1988, I knew about Rocchioli from those wines making it all the way to New York. Small production, and very little of it, which is what made it special for us too. To be able to envision all these small produced wines from California, and specifically Russian River Valley. And when we ended up coming out here, I knew the Rocchioli label and the Rocchioli name, so it was fascinating for me to come and see. Okay, here's where it grows, and here's where it is. Right?
Yeah, I remember you coming. I don't remember who you were with, but I remember going in the winery and meeting Charlie Palmer. And it was like, but you're such a nice guy. I mean, I think we hit it off right off the bat.
Obviously, Rocchioli, and you're known for Pinot, probably most prominently, right? But you're producing Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc almost in the same, as much of that combined as Pinot, right? Is that where we're at this point?
And white is 50%, red is 50%. Yeah.
So this is Little Hill. So this is the Little
Chardonnay,
Hill.
Little Hill.
There's very little of this, right?
I do about 7 barrels of this.
7 barrels.
Up to 10. I only bottle about 7 though, because I select the wine for this program. But The Little Hill is the oldest Chardonnay vineyard we have. It was one of the first Chardonnay vineyards that my father planted in 1972. The Little Hill is actually, the soils are very stony and kind of lean, so you get a mineral quality to this wine. It's barrel fermented, it's full malolactic, yet it doesn't have that butter fat. It's not classic old California, it's actually more European in style by design. I learned winemaking by doing. I really didn't go to school for it. Of course, I studied like crazy, but I don't have a formal education. But I was very much influenced by Burgundy. I learned a heck of a lot from Steve Kistler and Bert Williams. So now I feel like I get it. You know, it's not power anymore. That I went through that phase as a young man. It's not, you know, just lean and acid. It needs to be balanced, you know, so you have richness yet elegance, you know. And
It's finesse.
Finesse.
It's got
and
a lot of finesse, this wine.
These things age. I mean, you're talking a 10-year-old Chardonnay is, don't be afraid.
Yeah. West Block is probably the most famous, or
Yeah, that
after,
is the most. That's the one
all
that
sought after.
all the wineries that use these grapes, you know, hit fame. This is the 2018 West. Again, this is our oldest existing Pinot Noir vineyard.
How old are these vines?
These were planted in 1969.
Yeah.
I've since then reselected this clone, and now it's sort of proprietary because I've been selecting it for cluster structure and leaf structure and vine habits, and I've been propagating it in all different soils, and it's really a kind of our clone now. We kind of call it the Rocchioli clone. So.
And Tom, I've heard this from you a number of times, but you know our viewers, our audience needs to hear it too. But you're always saying that, you know, the quality starts in the vineyard, and I love how you say, what is it? If you grow great grapes and you get in there, if you don't screw it up.
Well, that's basically it. If you have great vineyards, your job is to translate it into wine. If it changes, you're blowing it. So let's just say that it's all in the field, the character, the quality. We are so focused on making sure the quality of the grapes are as best as they can be. Being consistent is everything in this business. I mean, everybody can have a wine come out and get their 99 points, and then we don't hear from them again. We're consistent. Consistency is the key. We sell the grapes to wineries, and they're consistent, and I think that's a tribute to the vineyard.
You know, as a chef, the older I get, and the more I know, and the more I'm exposed to, is the same thing. If we start in the kitchen with pristine ingredients, the very, very best, it's our job just not to screw it up.
Yeah.
Just enhance it, season it, treat it well, things like that, and you have delicious food, and it's the same thing in the winery.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you want to be the best,
Start with the best.
That's right.
Cheers.
All right. Cheers.